Hey, Ben.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome, awesome. I have strep throat, so my throat's a little gonna sound a little weird, But yeah, let me
You
give
don't
me.
even sound a little hoarse, dude.
Oh, really? Yeah, it might be just the microphone, but I can definitely hear it.
Yeah. You sound kind of like you're tired. I mean, after years
Yeah,
spent with you,
yeah.
you just sound a little tired. You don't sound like your throat's hurt, though.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, it could be related to the strep. All
You know
right.
what? No, no, it's starting to. The more you talk, the more nasality is getting into it. So
Oh,
maybe.
gotcha, gotcha.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Good news because I know you've been waiting for this. Cloud Events merged the PR, did EC? So, for verifiability. So,
Awesome.
yeah, so we as yeah, so like Apple, we have the whole like one-time contribution. So we need to, I'm gonna go with legal and because they asked for some help to with their SDKs because they they're one, you need maintainers, but two, just getting someone that's like really knowledgeable about, writing the proposal. So that might take a little bit, but we're gonna try to get Java out first.
Oh, so you're gonna do the SDKs for cloud events?
Yeah, part of them, yes.
Oh, awesome, dude.
Yep.
Awesome.
Was I was gonna
So
ask what languages do you care about?
I care specifically about Go, but the realization, and this is for my morning this morning with Yair, is that what we are more likely to, well, I care about Go right now. So that's to answer your question.
Okay.
Um, I think there's going to be like an Erlang effort, like it's going to be a lot of different efforts. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm breaking down the system of operation in a way that these guys can consume it, especially based on the stuff that I demoed because they want to just get started. And that was the whole point of demoing the thing, right?
Okay.
The I am like a half a step away from I have all of these RFCs and like all of this stuff. Like, dude, I have four proposals for events. I have but all of it's like I need one more read through just to be sure that all of the things, the I's and T's and or dotted and
Yeah,
crossed and
yeah.
kind of stuff. And so then I'm gonna email that to the folks because there's, people asking about it in the CD events channel who I said, hey, I need your input on these events. And so four events, not one. One of them, anyway, when I send it, if you want to be included in that set of people that can pre-read to kind of iterate on it, or if you want to wait until it's in as an actual, hey, this is what we're proposing, either one of those works fine for me, Ben. I'm not, I'm just building towards a thing.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and so I will try and get everything out in the next like 48 hours because it's
Okay.
that close. Um,
How much are we talking? Like how many proposals and just so I can kind of like prepare.
like, yeah, dude, it's five.
Okay, okay, okay.
One of it is the Cedrus expression stuff that I, pre-gave everyone. And that's the biggest. The rest of them are just new events.
Okay.
And two of them are data ops events, and then the scheduler that we talked about is actually two pieces.
Okay.
Um, and but that's the one that those folks in Bloomberg needed.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
And that my system needs as well, too, something to handle scheduling. So, or a concept of schedule being handled is for the folks who are going to be consuming it. And because it's like, the direct interface, yeah. So I'm gonna take a step back, take all of my docs that I have for internal that says this is how we're building the thing, and make sure, it's sanitized, and then get that to the ambassadors because the ambassadors want to work on the thing. And then we're going to break that down. Yair will break that down to see who's interested in building stuff or taking core pieces of it and building something on their own, so that we can work towards a common DSL for whatever the thing is when it's done. Because that was the whole point, is creating a DSL for SDLC that covers the entire workflow.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I'll be really curious. Do we have GitHub issues that highlight all this? I think we do, but I just want to make sure we do.
Not for the new. events, right? That because, I haven't proposed them yet. I needed to check with the people who wanted to use the events to see if it matches. We needed to iterate it on it like once or twice to be sure that I'm covering all the things that they said and they feel comfortable with that as, so that we can
Yeah,
get them
yeah.
to participate once it's over there, because that's the portion of it that we need as a group is we need the community to come in when we put something in and say, yeah, go with that, or no, make this change, right? We need that engagement. So we're going to do some of that in the pre-engaged side and some of that with the ambassadors to draw in more of the community, get him talking about and doing the thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then just so I'm covering this correctly, you said that there is that doesn't look right. Oh. Um
So I started the email and I have the draft. So yeah, so the um oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so there's the schedule, execution, change window event that is specific to um saying, hey, this is the window you can do this execution, and whether or not that window was breached, right?
okay. And you said
Um,
there was four new events?
yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm looking at the email where I'm like putting this all together and
Okay,
sending it
okay.
out. Um, and then I thought the data ops ones were in this particular email, but they're not in this email. And so I have to figure out, I know they're around, dude. I have so much stuff.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
part of what I'm doing is pulling that all together. But the data ops events were migration and reconciliation. Which are data ops concepts of one, when you migrate a data source, and whether or not it was like reverted and things like that. And then reconciliation, have
Yeah.
you reconciled, you know, the convergent between declared states? Because that's the other side of migration. It's the physical, did you move the thing? And then did you verify it? And so those are the two events that are in there for the data ops. Okay.
Yeah, and there was
So,
another one that I thought is kind of interesting that I've been thinking about recently as well.
mhm.
But yeah, and then the scheduling events you said was sorry, I was trying to write everything down, but
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know
no,
if
and I could do that, dude. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're doing that, by the way.
yeah, it's no
Um,
worries.
I will, here, how do I do this? Go copy like that. Um, Zoom, and then I will share it with you in chat like this. Mm. Okay, so I put the four events in our
Awesome.
conference chat, in the video call chat.
Cool. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
Okay.
So with
Yeah,
that,
those make sense.
and the Cedrus expression that ties it all together to creates the provenance chain.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much done. And that's all this has ever been about is creating this chain of provenance for the work that you say you're
Mhm.
going to do. And, using the authorship to say, oh no, the author is actually the expert of what's supposed to happen and then go from there, right? It's super simple. It's
Okay.
just that most people don't think about the problem that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I think it makes total sense. Okay, yeah, because this is definitely a lot.
Yeah.
Let me think what the best way, because I want to make sure I do due diligence and really review these.
Hmm.
I, but I don't want to block the progress. So whenever
Oh,
you
and
put
that's the other thing. Like nobody can. It is. Yeah, I'm not concerned about that. Like the 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 nature of the design means the community can debate about this stuff as long as you want. The next part about it is people can create their own events. Like
right, right.
we have official CDF events, but having official CDF events is more about this is what the community is saying where we come together at, but it still has to have the ability to let companies do what they want to do outside of it, right? That was always the one thing that I noticed about the way that we were doing this, right? And then we have this concept of, oh, an experimental event, but it shouldn't be that. It should just be namespace, right? And so there is, if you're using CD events, everything must be built on top of, that's why I introduced the base event, because then there's a base event and then the CD events that we say are actual, supported CD events by the community. These are the ones that are interoperable. But Everything else, any other event that you wanted to create as a company or as a group or as an organization or even as an individual, you should be able to do that in your own namespace, but inherit from one of the base events so that the system understands what's going on, right? And if you at least inherit from base event, then it's always a proper CD event and it can be processed.
Yeah.
You
And I
know,
think, yeah, I think we definitely need to flesh that out.
yeah.
Because I think there's one question that, from more of a governance perspective,
Hmm.
is that, um, and this is not saying like, oh, this is like wrong, but it's just something that we need to think about,
Yeah.
is that when you inherit from a base event, does
Hmm.
the parent, I'm going to call it class, how much does it change the semantics of anything? And if it does, what
No,
does
it
that
can't.
mean?
It
Oh, it
can't.
can't. Okay, okay,
Right.
that's good.
Yeah, inheritance is one way, and for the trick is that we as the group that is the CDF or the governing body of CD events, we are saying that, hey, if you want to create a build start event, it has these minimum fields, right? These are the base fields. But if you want to say, I'm going to inherit this and I'm going to add a bunch of my own fields and have my own build started event for my group or company or for my product, you should be able to do that. And the rest of the system will treat the build started build started because all of the information you expect is going to be there, plus whatever extra their stuff is. But it's the specific things that we're interested in that we want to protect and be sure that that's always in the place that we expect. That way
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can write software against it, but you're not also locking other companies in to be like, oh, you have to use custom data. I think the way that we were using custom data, we were thinking about
Terrible.
it
Yeah,
correctly. No, but we
terrible.
were thinking about it correctly because you need a place where you can say,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, here's where we want to share data. And if you want to pass it between groups, then you put it in custom data with a namespace. And the people who are using custom data know that they're looking for your data in that namespace, right? And that lets you pass things or have things that are completely public. But the other side of being a successful vendor language, that a vendor will support, is like the way that Java works, right? Because you have namespacing and you can create your own thing, or you can extend somebody else's and still create your own thing. That's really the portion of our system that I thought we were doing poorly, and that having something that's actionable and works and saying, hey, this is the paradigm that brings that all together. That's the next piece that we being my company, we are, that's what the guys are tackling now. And we're going back and forth. I mean, I already have my own ideas, but it's always nice to, you hire people so they can say, hey, this is how I think it should work. You know
Yeah,
how I am.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's community, but everybody ends up doing it my way. So yeah, yeah, that's how yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the reason why I don't like custom data is that there was no, especially now it's a lot better, but if you remember DDC, like when we first started, there was no namespace concept, right? It was
Right,
just literally a dumping ground for anybody. And that's
right.
why I don't like it, is just because it's just kind of like a Wild West free for all between, people could collide with one another, but the namespace does handle that as long as people understand that you can potentially collide with someone if you use the same namespace, right? So,
Yes.
but yeah, yeah, I think that's why I think the inheritance model makes a lot more sense, and I think that should be the path forward.
Okay, awesome. That's good to hear because that was the other side of it. Because what the inheritance model does is that now any group can define what their tool is going to emit, and that's all they need to do. But the other side of it, the conduit side, will accommodate because it's in the object and it has a schema that it can verify against. And that was the real trick that everybody, if you're going to introduce your own event, you have to also introduce your own schema so that the event can be validated. But it just makes all of the responsibility sit with the author, right? And that's actually where you want to sit with the people who make the pipelines and who say, oh, yeah, if your company says, oh, everybody has to have, this explicit ID in pipelines for production, you can call it the thing, and it could just be on the version that's for your company. And that's how you want that to work so that companies can set policies and say, this is a global enforcement thing, and say, nope, everybody in the company has to use this data object or inherit from our data object. And then that's how you do that enforcement, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And like I said, like with the semantics, like I think what I want to be clear is that like when we say deployment, let's say, or maybe a good example is build. Like
Hmm.
let's say we have a build and someone's like, "Oh, well, I my definition of build is build plus some extra stuff, right?"
Hmm.
Should we allow for that or should
It
it,
does. That's my point. That's what we've literally, that's what I'm literally proposing, that it should be the community's version of build. And then you say, hey, I want to extend that object. I want to make my own object that will have all of the community's version of build stuff. So everything that I interact with in the system will still behave the same, but it'll just have extra data. Now, true, the other systems won't know what to do with the extra data, but they don't need to because they are built to work with the specific data they're meant to work with.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
but what you're talking about is still syntax, it's still structure.
yeah.
I'm talking more about like the semantics. Like, let's say someone defines build as always to be build and test. They have no test concept. Build to them is both build and test, right? So my question is if someone has a parent class, right, that inherits from this build event, and they want to say, hey, our this new parent class is build plus test, even though we have test events.
But that's not build plus test are two different sets of things. An
Yeah,
event
yeah, I understand
is,
that, but I'm saying someone has this definition though, right?
but
Like,
Ben,
yeah,
if you're saying you understand and then you're immediately showing me that you don't understand the thing that I'm saying by your next question, that's what I'm trying to explain to you.
okay. What am
Okay?
I missing?
Okay. So what I'm saying is that what the event is just a specific thing that the machine does outside of a concept of build and test. It's an action-based thing. It starts a body of work that's definable. And so even if you have a concept of build and test and you want to call it all build, you are aware that you are running test. That's the problem that this solves, right? And so in a Cedrus expression, yes, they can do that, but it would still be a body of steps that make up their concept of build. Those steps would include test steps, but the Cedrus expression itself would just be called build. And that's how you solve that problem, right? And so you're saying, okay, great, you can call it whatever you want in your world and your worldview, but you have to acknowledge what's actually being done by the steps that you're actually doing. And so if you're taking the steps of running a test, then you should, whether or not you include it as the events to expect in it, that's a different story because of the Cedrus expression. The Cedrus expression lets you say, well, no, I don't want to collect any data from my test other than it passed. And so the only event that you would need to include is something that said, oh, the test pass. That's the flexibility that you get from the Cedrus expressions. What the events do is say very specifically for this bespoke action, we are naming it X as a group, right? And that's the group saying, no, this is how we want to put it together so that it always works with other software. But the Cedric expressions lets company then do however they want to communicate it internally.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I think yeah, I'm not wording this well. Like, let's just use build. I think introducing test was a bad example.
Okay.
Maybe if like let's say we have someone that uses build where
Hmm.
it means a group of artifacts instead of a single artifact, right?
Hmm.
So my I guess my question is they cannot create a parent class to say, or they can create a parent class, but they have to acknowledge that when they define it using the Cedric expressions, that it is these individual build groups. Is that a good understanding, or can they not do that? I guess is my question.
Yeah, and that's the one. They're two separate concepts, is what the thing is, right? And I think that's part of what you're that's being conflated, is that what I'm talking about is the bespoke steps to accomplish the task, regardless of what you call it. If you called it chipmunks, right? And you said, no, this is our chipmunk process. And then the chipmunk process is, you're going to do some software packaging, some software testing. You put it in the integration system. The integration system runs some tests. You do some checks. You call up Ted. Ted says, hey, the tests are done. He just says that on the phone when you call him, but that's a part of the process. And it's going to emit an event to show that you actually called Ted. And we call this whole thing chipmunk, right? That's what it allows you to do. But the steps of calling Ted is still a step to call Ted that has to be included in the set because it's the set of things that you're interested in reporting back to yourself that was done. And so it's not about the work that's being done in the tools. You can still do that any way you want and call it. It's about how do you want to communicate that the work was done to the rest of your organization and group and the rest of the world. Because that's what we write our software against. We write the software against what we expect to be done when that work completes, right? And based on the steps that was taken. It's never based on the concept that, well, we don't really call it that. If you have the test in there, you're still going to do the work with the test. If you have a step that calls TED, you're going to call TED every time. You just want to be able to include the record of that work being done. And so one side of it is the collection of work to be done to accomplish the thing that you're naming. And then the other thing is naming the thing that is the steps that accomplish the task. Those things are actually separate concepts in Conduit, right? One is the body of work being done, and the other is the report of the work as it completes. To Conduit, they're separate things, right? But to us
Right,
as
right.
human beings, we're talking about the same thing. But that's not how language works. And so the problem that we're solving is that as a speaking group of people, as people who use language, we literally use the language and we mean different things. That's the point that you're pointing out, right? You might have a set of things you want to do one way and it works this way. And like, okay, great. But you're really just communicating your set of steps in your way. We are interested both in the set of steps and setting up definitions like when you complete this step, like your build finish, it must contain these things so that other systems, when we write software against it and we get that event, we all know what that means. It doesn't even mean that we understand or we are aware of what format you use to put that in, whether it was like JSON or straight text. It doesn't matter. We don't need to know that. We just need to know here's the slot where that information is. The people who have the tools and writing software against it and using software against it, they know what the tools they connect to, the formats and what they produce. That's how we're doing it. We're skipping the step of saying, oh, I'm going to handle the data validation for you. And we're saying, no, what we're handling is the communication of the data is here in this slot that you expect. It's complete 100% data transport, not doing anything else, right? That's when you move from eventing to, something more TCP/IP like, because all we're doing is moving data from one place to another to do the same work that you could have done in the original system. But you're going to do it in a pool where everything is. And it's all been verified that it was done on that system, right? The envelopes is there to say, hey, verifiability. I communicated with that system. They did the job they said they were going to do. Here's the receipt for it with provenance. And I'm interested in that event because that event has the data that I want to take action events. And that's what you do.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I think the idea is fine.
Hmm.
I think the issue or the problem that I'm thinking about, well, not problem like, but like, like a thing that we have to think about, like not a problem with the idea, but um like you say steps, right? But a step is a build. I guess like this is a CD events problem. This is not like a proposal, but like we just need to make sure that we consistently use build the same, right? Like I mean it has to.
Well,
Um or
well,
no.
I don't I think that I think we don't use build consistently now. Like build means different things for different people. And don't get me into bake, right? Because bake is just a build. And and when people started saying bake, that used to drive me nuts because
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
just talking about is a build. No, no, we're
Yeah, yeah.
baking it. Like, no, so it's what we're dealing with is that problem, right? Where the actual function that we're trying to do, we have a name for as a group. Because if you say build, everybody knows what you mean, and yet no one knows what it is, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
different, if it's Python, it's going to be different than if it's Java. If it's C++, it's completely different again.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, because build is more of a concept for humans that is ephemeral, we need to take that ephemerality and flush that out to say, okay, but specifically in your context that you, sir, are talking about build, what were the actual steps and what data comes out with those steps so that I might write code against that? That's what we really, that's the problem that I was trying to solve for platform engineers, for our group, for SDP. That's why I originally came up with it. It just turned out that the guys that I worked with were complete assholes. And they were like, no, no, we can do it. We can do it. We don't need you. And I'm like, fuck you. I don't need that. And so, yeah, this is how this works. It works because it works, but it works because it's just an issue of improving the way that we communicate an idea and a concept so that the AI and all of us understand that, yeah, Ted's build has all of these things, but I can always find the build started event in it that has the things that the community says would be in this build started event. And I can write code against that because I know when his build started event comes in, I can subscribe to that execute for that workflow, for that particular workflow step, and say, in that workflow, that build started, I want to do a thing. That's what you're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I think yeah, it definitely like I said, it makes total sense.
Hmm.
I guess the next steps is rather than trying to like figure it all out, like because I think what I'm trying to do is like figure out like everything right now in my head, and I don't need to. So once the proposal is in, because I'm very curious about that aspect of it, is just basically like the semantics, the boundaries, and how we group things. So let me know when that because that's the
Yeah, that's the Cedrus
specific one.
expression thing,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
And so
okay.
that'll be, yeah, that's what I'm going to give. Like the five things, I mean, the four events, it's going to be the four events plus the Cedric expression bit that I showed at the conference.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
watched my conference talk on,
Yep, yep.
what that is, that's the portion that handles that, right? That's why there were two separate, I think I used like build deploy was
Hmm.
the thing, was in the example, and the steps between the two groups were completely different, but some of them had the same steps in it. And so to the system, you were doing a build deploy, but one was the Spinnaker team's version and the other one was like Maggie Chen's version, which is my nod to Black, Orphan Black. I don't know why I did that, but it was like Maggie Chen, Orphan Black. Anyway, yeah. And so you get your own version of build deploy per group. But because we know that each of them will always have a build started step, and each one always will have a specific, either a service deployed or what's the other one? Service something?
Upgrade service published.
Yeah,
That
service
one?
published. That was it. Service published or service deployed. And so it the some of it is that hokum convention hokum like with Python where you're saying no, we always use self, right? But technically you can put whatever word you want it there and it still works, right? But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
convention is to use self. So it's the same thing in the naming structure of a Cedrus expression. If it's build, and this is in the spec, by the way, but it says like if you use the term build, you're saying that in this Cedrus expression, you're going to have a build started event and a build finish event. That is your commitment for calling your Cedrus expression build dash whatever, right? Because you're referencing the fact that it's going to have build features in it. The same way with deploy. If the community says this is a keyword, right? Because we're adding this concept, then it becomes a keyword in the naming of the Cedrus expression. And that's completely controlled by the CD events, by us saying these are what the CD events are. Because when we create a subject, that becomes the keyword that, okay, these are events that define that subject. If you say that subject is a part of your Cedrus expression in the naming, then we're going to expect as a hint for the rest of the world that it has those specific events. But if you named all of your Cedrus expressions, my favorite Cedrus expression, it could have whatever steps you want in it.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that makes yeah, like I said, that makes total sense. And yeah, like I said, I'll be really interested in seeing the proposal.
Hmm.
And kind of like go through that. But yeah, yeah, like I said, I'm kind of curious about some of the questions I have, but I think the questions that I have is not relevant to the proposal though. That's where I'm kind of landing.
Okay.
So but
And
yeah,
that's
either
that's fair. And that's a great insight, by the way, if you can look at it and go, oh, no, I see where I'm going. Dude, you're awesome. Yeah.
yeah, let me know when or do you think you'll be able to get those in
It'll be in the next 48
today?
hours, dude.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 48 hours you said. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay, awesome, awesome.
Look, faster now, gimme.
Yeah.
But you have access to the Cedrus expression proposal as it is now. dude.
Okay.
That's what I gave everybody. I literally
Yeah,
put
yeah,
that
I
in the
saw that.
channel.
Yeah.
So just go if you want to, ask questions about it, look at it, dude.
Okay.
Please look at it and then ask the questions.
All right. Yeah, that
Because that's literally what I'm going to submit. And the reason why I put it out there was so that the questions that you have now, I could have addressed them before the point where I'm handing them to the community saying
yeah,
this
yeah,
is what
makes
we're
sense.
proposing, right?
Yeah,
And so, that's been there for a while. But yeah, that's the thing. It's there. Take a look. You don't have to wait because that's what I'm literally going to give the community. And so you already have that one.
okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, I will look at it and all right. And then yeah, I'll look out for those PRs as well. And then
Well,
another one.
even that's not going to be a PR yet because the events I have to email to all of the people who committed to doing the feedback. Like Bloomberg is going to get this to be sure that I'm covering what they want to cover. That's what's going to happen with those. And when I
Oh,
get
okay.
some feedback from them, that's when I'll propose the events. There's no rush for me to have those events proposed, right? That really the thing that I am saying officially, here's what I'm submitting is going to be the Cedrus expression thing, though. That'll be done
Okay.
in the next 48 hours. But go ahead and take a look at it because it's the
Yeah.
same thing. I'm just cleaning it up. And, because part of it too is like, as I'm doing the thinking through it and producing in the actual writing of it, I'm going to use a tool to do that writing, right? And
Hmm.
then go back and do the editing and make sure it's right. And so one of the things that I have that tool doing when I do it is what do you think are good questions? What do you think the group is going to do or ask? And so it also includes in it questions that I had that were open questions for the group. Like, how do you think we should do X? How do you think we should do Y? A lot of those I keep making decisions on and saying, oh, no, clearly it's this. And then taking out the questions. That was the other reason why I was like, hey, guys, take a look. Because anything that was still kind of in flux, where I was like, maybe A or B, I was hoping that someone would read it and go, oh, yeah, no, B's better for me because of X. And,
Okay.
that made sense. That was how you do it and work with the community. But I can't really do anything if I go, hey, guys, take a look, and no one does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's definitely a fair call out. Okay, and just so I make sure I'm labeling this correct, these are two new subjects, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay,
These
okay,
are,
cool, cool.
yeah, I think it's, yeah, subjects and predicate. Yeah, these are new subjects.
Okay, awesome, awesome. For total events. Okay, cool. And then one thing I want to talk to you about because so this actually came up a long time ago, even before me. There's an old GitHub issue that talked about attestations, which originally, well, we kind of stuck them in artifacts, like using an SBOM link. Um, but I was wondering, so my thinking is, should we have an actual attestation event, or should we just have ways of linking to the attestation? I guess that's kind of like where my question is. Like usually an attestation would be like, an SBOM was created or some sort of salsa, attestation was created, right? So those could technically be events, but it might be
Yeah.
too granular. So that's why I was kind of
No, I don't think that's too grand. I think this is what the community is about, right? If you have a reason that the way that I thought about this originally, and I can remember you and I having a discussion about this in the temporal conference, is that what we're trying to do is look at a tool and say, what do the tools do, right? What
right,
are the
right.
steps that the tools are taking? So if you're saying that the tool that does this attestation, I wanted to emit an event, that makes
Hmm.
sense, right? If
Okay.
that's what the goal of it is, right? Because it ties it to the ecosystem.
Hmm.
The thing that we actually um, did not really talk about or think about, I think that's missing in the sets are, there are like the way we talk about this ecosystem, it doesn't really talk about like other systems that have like observability events, right? And so like
Right,
if you're
right.
linking it to a Datadog or something like that, where there's information about the system under
The
load,
resource, yeah.
yeah, that, how do you get that back in? That's more of what I think is our next challenge, but I think it can live still in the observability space. It's just that as I'm doing the conduit work, I have to also go, oh, if people want to consume other events, information about their SDLC workflows that are observability related, how do you get that into a system where it makes, where it can link and make sense and
Right,
relate
right.
that to the same thing? Fortunately, the chain ID concept um, is the way to do that, but it's like, how do you make that link beforehand? That's part of the challenge, right? How
Yeah,
is it set
yeah.
up in the system? But each one of those things, those associations are created when someone sets it up because the systems know to watch that pipeline. So you have created that association. It's just, flushing it out, being sure it gets into the system and you make that connection.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but
So
yeah, that's what I've seen.
one thing that we merged that might help with that, did you see? Let me
Hmm.
share this with you. We just merged this recently, um, which is this domain ID idea. Da, da, da. So in domain IDs, it allows you to link back to external systems. Okay, that's not, go to the proposal here. So like here's an example. So we have this domain ID that says GitHub, like this PR, right?
Hmm.
So it's just a standardized format that allows people to consistently link back to an external system without like, parsing a URL or whatnot, not understanding the paths. So this allows you to kind of like do that. And I gave a list of the
Okay, but
tools
what would you do with it? Like, what's
for.
when would you use it? Give me an example of when you could
Oh,
use
yeah,
it.
yeah. So that would be like, for example, like let's assume we didn't have attestation events,
Hmm.
but we had some like an SBOM that we wanted to link to, right? You can now use a domain ID to say, hey, this is just an attestation link relation with this domain ID, and it's this like
So
this.
it's to add it to the chain.
Yes,
You're just trying to add that information to the
yes,
change for later reference.
exactly. Yep.
Um, yeah, I get where you'd want to do that, especially in a distributed system, um, because there's no other way to manage that. But that's not really a need that Conduit has because Conduit does it the opposite direction, right?
Right, right,
You in Conduit, you say this, you already know what the entire workflow is. So there's no reason to do a domain because the workflow itself is that domain ID. That's what the workflow ID becomes, right? Because it's like this workflow and then all the events associated with that workflow tie into that workflow ID via the chain ID, and then it's all linked. And so it's the workflow, chain ID, boom, you're done.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, if it does, yeah, if it doesn't make sense for your system, but I was just thinking like maybe for the example that you just gave, like this could be
Yeah, for
useful.
distributed, there was no other way to deal with that. But you know what I mean? So that becomes a graph that you'd have to keep and maintain all of the associations about all of the things as a domain
Yeah,
ID.
yeah.
That makes sense. It's more like here are all the pieces that are involved in this thing over this large space. But yeah, dude, that would solve that. That sounds like it would solve that problem. I I would have to think of it a little bit more to know what the challenges are going to be in that space. But definitely increases the amount of information to manage in the space and things to go through and look for things. And if it's the system of record about the record of the system, which is a weird way to say that, but in a distributed
Yeah.
system, that's what you need, right? You
Yep,
need
yep.
it sounds like it solves that problem at first glance. It's not really a problem that Conduit has because Conduit's a closed system. It's not distributed.
Right, right. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So yeah, I just wanted to share that because we did merge this, and it seemed relevant to what you were talking about. But okay, so I'll think more about this attestation events and see what that would look like, and then maybe get that out as a PR as quickly as I can.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, what I am still more interested in is the CD events in Spinnaker. All right, if that's going to do, because part of what I need to think through with not just my guys, but with the investment groups I'm working with is like what's going to be the approach to like distributing it. And when I looked into like what we when we started doing the work, we had to, of course, set some stuff up to do it. We set up Spinnaker, we set up Jenkins, and we were using GitHub Actions. But I was like, oh, I can write the things to make this work so that it works and it's usable in a way, and people can continue the integration. It doesn't have to be um, super duper like mapped to everything because it's still up to the user to decide what goes in it, right? They are still selecting, boom, this is the base event I want to use, or either this is my version of the event, and they have to still map everything to those data slots. That's always on the user to say, oh, this thing goes in that slot. There are some default things where we can say, hey, Spinnaker has that concept. If that data is available, from this thing, it goes in that slot. But otherwise, it's up to the user, especially once they start being able to create their own events. Because if you have your own version of a CD event, and you're using Spinnaker, you need to be able to populate all of your fields for your particular event. And so there's never going to be this concept of a perfect match other than here is the template of the thing that you already said that you were going to do. How would you like to map that to
Map
specific
it.
data?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like I said, like priorities like shifted.
Hmm.
But like my original proposal actually solved that. Um, yeah, let me see if I can bring it back up and try to get that like on the roadmap because yeah, that's just gonna be a win for Spinnaker regardless. So
Yeah,
um,
to have Spinnaker be one of the first tools that can do that would be super huge. It would be a super huge resurgent factor for Spinnaker. And having the ability already to tie into a tool agnostic, framework like this, that will resurge all of our tools, right? Because they'll be the first ones to do that. That was the whole point of doing in the CDF. It's not only can we say, here's the interoperability, but here's tools that already support it. And then it becomes the map for this is how you can make your tools support it. Because even the homegrown tools can support CD events fairly easily.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like I said, I'll try to push for it. And if I get any good news, I'll let everyone know in the Slack channel.
Okay.
And even in Spinnaker, I'll ping them and let them know.
Okay.
Um,
And yeah, and we should probably have some other conversations about, that like outside of this context, because there's things, of course, that, just about process and how we're attacking it that isn't necessarily for the open source community, but you should be aware of because it is framing a lot of things that, my people are whispering in my ear about because, hey, you know, you also want to be sure that the community is healthy and it supports everybody. How do you ensure that everybody's doing the things that they commit to and doing that work? And so, yeah, if we can address that, that would be great.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Okay, yeah, my throat's dying, so
Yeah, yeah, no, I feel
so
you, man. Let's drop.
but yeah, it was good talking to DC, and
Good talking to
I'm
you too,
really
sir.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to the proposal. So
Okay,
yeah,
take a look at the one that I've been asking you to take a look at since May. Okay.
okay, I'll take a look. Yeah,
Yeah, that would be useful because I think that will tell you a lot of the information and address a lot of your things because that's all I'm going to submit is that form,
okay,
is that document. So please take a look. I mean, dude, yeah, I asked you guys in May, so let's
okay,
do
yeah,
it.
I'll take a
Okay.
look then.
Okay. All right.
All right,
Thanks.
DC, have a good one. All
You too. Bye.
right, bye.